So we're going to assemble a set of carburetors after you've pulled them down and cleaned them as far as you need. The very first step you need to do is grab your diaphragm and your slide. Put that in and let it go. If it does not do that, you need to stop, take your slide out, and you either need to clean your slide a lot more, or you need to get yourself a small rag and a little bit of polish and polish down where your slide travels. Because if you don't have a free-flowing slide, how can you have a free-flowing motorcycle? That has to do that. So we'll go through and start assembling it. I realise a lot of people aren't going to have taps, but whether you slip out and get a 3 by 0.5 tap and just run it through so that you know when we've come out with a screwdriver, out in all the way, that we haven't damaged the shaft in your thread, and just run the shaft up the tap just to make sure everything's clean and free, because you don't, well, I can do it here because I've got spares, but if you've got one bike and one carburetor, you're not going to have spare shafts if you send a screw through there and it's wrong. So maybe just slip out to your supplier and just get it. You're not going to use it that often, but it's going to be worth your while to get one. Now when it comes to putting these things together, how I said you pull it apart and you take a photo so that you make sure your washers and everything are on the exact same line. You get your springs in the right spot, your seals on the right way. Put a little bit of rubber grease on them, just to help. It won't go together any other than one way, because what will happen, your seals go with, we call it the bucket, but the dip goes to the outside. So what happens when you start your engine up, vacuum's coming through here and it pulls the inside edge of the wiper, inside edge of the bucket, the seal, in against your shaft. So they go outside to the outside. That brass shaft goes on there. Now, when you drop it in, if you haven't got this brass washer on this side, what will happen is when you go to put it in, obviously that is going to be way off centre by 3 mil, and your butterfly won't fit. So, you know, it's not rocket science, I suppose, but that's why you need everything in place to go right. That's got to go the right way. The spring goes on the right way. It goes through. It comes around and picks up that. So you don't want to go around because it won't do it. But 1.5, one's too much. So it's only about half a turn to get your butterfly shaft to line up, and then it will come back shut like that where you can see the heads of the screws. So you don't go very far. A little bit more on this bloke. These are a lot more supple than the last one. And you put your other brass washer on. Then you put your plate on. Yes. That way. Can you go that way? spring on. Spring's going to go on there. It's going to come on there. So he's going to have to go on the same way, which is going to be a bit of a... How's that going to work? That's that one. So we need to spring that at the same point. It's half a turn. Some of this is spring loaded, so you've got to sort of think about how it goes. Then you keep a plate, and then your nut, and then that will run around, so that's nice. So your butterfly runs in. It can only go one way, obviously, because you've got the backs on there. So he runs down. Just push him into your thumb. Oop, too far. It takes a bit of doing, because once they get into where they're comfortable, they slide around a little bit. So then you pointy pliers, points. You're going to need something fine to line the screws up once it gets into your hole, into your position, because it won't quite be 100%. It'll be close, but it won't be 100%. So then you grab your 2 new screws. We've got the Loctite as well. Like I said, so a little bit. So these are stainless. The new screws. They are also a PZ head, not a Phillips head or a JIS. So you get a screwdriver for each application. So just something, I put them together, just the tiniest little drop, if there's any left, should be. Maybe there's, oh yeah, there it comes. Just a drop of fluid. Now I always, you never say never, but I always, with the little tiny screws and very fine threads, you always go backwards first. And then you will pick up where your thread starts, and you'll just screw them straight through. Because if you go forwards, you can cross thread these little fine threads. So you screw it in, but you don't screw it home. I'll explain that why in very 2 seconds. So we drop the other one in. Bit of gunk on the bottom. And it's ready. Come on. That didn't work very well. Very fiddly stuff. Backwards first. Come on, you prickly thing. Righto. So you have them home, or you have them done up, but you don't have them done up yet. What you need to do now is you grab your 12mm socket, because if you do the socket, if you do your butterflies up now, when you go to do your nut up, your shaft can't move. So now you bring your butterfly open until he starts opening, and then you don't want a lot, just put half an on it, just to tighten him up, and then you can let it go. And then you need to double check all the way around the butterfly to make sure that he's shut. How do you know make sure he's shut? You hold him open and you flick it a couple of times. That will position the butterfly and the faces all the way around. Then you can grab your little screwdriver and do him up. Put a little bit of poundage on it. It's going to have Loctite on it, but there you go. And then I roll him back. Piece of my scribe. Just lay it square on the top of the thread. And just give it a little bit of a tap. Just enough, whether you can see, just enough to damage the thread so that it can't come undone. So there's the butterfly, the shaft done. Not too bad, not too hard. It's just a matter of going through now. Just make sure you've got your fibre washer on your needle and seat. Take the needle out because you're going to drop it out otherwise. Little 10mm sockets, as we explained to before, not spanners, because you don't want to go snapping a shaft off or a post off. Nothing has to be super tight. Emulsion tube, we've already cleaned, goes down from the top. There's a notch on it. There's also a notch in the end where it sits against, so that'll come down through and sit that way against that notch in the bottom of the tube. So you kind of got to line it up square, which is not really hard because the face of this cutout section faces the front of the carburetor square. So as long as you drop him in the hole square, it will go down square. And it might take a bit of doing sometimes, making sure it's right. The easiest way to make sure it's right is just to gently reposition it with a pair of pliers. So he's home. That's as simple as that. Popped him home. So he sits like that. Then you get your mains jet, wherever the mains jet's gone, and a washer. Now the washers have a rounded and a sharp edge on them. You can't see that very well. Sharp edge, I always pull them out and the sharp edges are down, so we put it in and the sharp edge is down. Feed the main in. Get your right sized screwdriver. It's not the right size one, this is the right size one. Once again, you don't need an 8-foot lever on it, just that's enough. The idle jet is all being cleaned out by eye. You can see through these two, that one hole there, these two holes here, and you can see straight through the end of it. So as long as you can see straight through the thing, it will be good. Where's the wire? And if all else fails, you can use your wavy bit of wire through, just to double check, make sure. That one, a little bit hesitant to go through. Ouch. Ow. Pointy. Then bit of a blowout. Your carb clean just to make sure. Nearly dropped it. So she's all good. So that drops down, and you get your right size screwdriver, whichever one that is. Where has he gone? Over here. Runs down. Once again, just don't lean on them. Your cap. There was an airway that I forgot. Because this cap sits over the idle mixture screw, bloody idle jet, there is a small airway that runs from your main through here. So you need to make sure that's clear. It's a pretty large hole, so it's not hard to get out, it's not hard to see. In right size screwdriver. That. Drop your jet in. There. Our clean but not clean plates. Just be careful when you put these back together again, because you've got to tap them home. This is pretty good, isn't it? Not plenty of in that. That's what varnish does. That is what fuel varnish does. So maybe you should put that in there. You can see that pushed some crap out there and through the end of the that's tight. So that just needs a bit of work. You just check that stuff as you're going. Clean it. Yeah. So I would stick this in the vise, which is behind the camera. Normally I would put them together a bank, but just for the video, so you guys aren't watching, then you would put the pin right in the center. Tap it home. And that's doing what it's meant to do. So then you grab hold of your verniers, the brass ones, 24.7, give or take a millimetre. 3, 4, 7. Righto. Now you need to set them on a, so by this you'll have your bank on, you'll have all 4 of them. Set them at a 45, make sure they bend, bounce, the workshop says to measure from the gasket surface. The gasket surface is not the gasket. The gasket surface is the surface the gasket sits on. So that means no gasket. Don't measure it with the gasket. So then it's just a matter of moving. They're way out. Mile out. So 24.7. So then you need to lift them. So you just need something small to get under that tang. And move the tang tiniest little bit. What a guess. So you get that one. But you also need to measure the other one. Because if these floats sit like that by 0.5 millimetre, you're measuring this one is still high. So you're going to split the difference. Whether that matters, but like we're saying, as close to physically possible, spot on as you can get it. So measure both floats on all your carburetors. And then it's just a matter of go through and put your gasket on, put your jets in. You can clean this little bugger. Didn't clean him up. But this is the big air jet, which is 1.8 mil anyway, so he's a big jet. He slides in. Once again, use your right size screwdriver. Just nip him up. And then put your bowl on. I've got to get the gaskets. Put your bowl on. Drop your diaphragm on. And like we said before, now that you've got your emulsion tube in there as well, if it doesn't do that, take it out and clean it until it does. But that's basically putting it together. So, yeah. Butterflies, screws, put your butterfly in, but don't do it up. Then you do your nut up. Then you flick it a couple of times. Make sure he's 100% shut. Then you do your screws up. And then Bob's your uncle. Do that 4 times and you're good. So we're up to diaphragms. As we saw before, you're looking for the wear marks on them, where they crease all the time. Only one of these, looking into the light, there's only one of these actually has a hole in it. But if you've got it open, you might as well cover them all. The product that's been recommended is 3-bond 1211. Solventless silicon and sag type. So you just need a little bit on a paddle. And then you just, oh jeez, might need some more. Then you're just dabbing it on the wear bit. Just put a nice little layer on it, so it covers. I work it around a little bit so it gets stuck in the weaving of the material. When you do this and recheck it again, you will still see the light coming through, but that's because it's white. If you used a black, it doesn't usually show. So I just use circular motions and dabbing, and it sort of pushes into the weave. It's a nice seal going. And there's a couple here that aren't quite through yet, but we'll just give them a bit of help. Seeing you there, because they're gonna wear through eventually, and this will strengthen that piece of rubber as well. A little bloke here, and then just allow that to dry for a good couple of hours anyway. So you just go through, and then you just carefully, because you've got to sit it down to dry, carefully just push it back so that it goes like that, and you can sit it on the bench and it's all good. The other particular thing that you need to worry about when you're doing diaphragms is these little springs. They do a lot of work holding your diaphragms against the air and holding the diaphragm steady. One thing I was told years ago was if you're driving at a low revs at 60 kilometres an hour for argument's sake, and the bike's going it's the diaphragm is just doing this. The spring's not quite strong enough, so you can extend it maybe 5 or 6 mil. You won't going to go far, just enough to make it stronger. But there again, they all have to be the same length. Like, what's the point of this one being this long and the next one being that longer again? You know, they're all going to react at different speeds. So, easiest way, put on a piece of paper. That's that length. That's that length. That's that one. That's that one. So you can see that the end one is going to be tighter than these other three. So one of them is going to have more tension on it to start with, so it's going to be harder to breathe. So you can either try squashing them, so you just twist them down. As you twist them down, just turn them against the spring. If that doesn't work, which it didn't really, you just stretch these ones a little bit. Not far, you don't need to go far with them until they're all the same within QE of one another, which is QE is a lot closer than 5 or 6 mil. It's a bit stretch that one. So you don't have to stretch them very far. Yeah, they're all out of whack. So you just light. And stretching them that little bit, it's just a matter of, so that's within. So they're all that closer. There's a couple. You'd be here all day. But as long as they're within a couple of mil of one another, that's not so bad. But that's another thing that has to be right. Has to be right. Your balances, your power, your air coming in, your fuel coming on at different rates. As close as possible across the whole 4 of them on everything. Right, so now we're going to go through and put the choke back in, the little indent springs and the balls, little ball bearings, indent balls. So we'll run in real close, and so you're looking to put in the spring back down through the hole in the body. If you've got a small screwdriver, like a jeweler's screwdriver, it helps. That just drops down. One either end. Sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. Depends what's going on. They go whistling across the workshop floor to A lot of them do. So now we're going to get the ball. So you sort of got to put both fingers across the hole and the ball in your thumb and your finger, and then yep, and it should just drop, should sit on the hole, and then it's just a matter of pushing it down and it'll just land straight on top of the spring. So then you put your choke on, it's going to go on your choke, then you slide that on. Now you grab a screwdriver and you push the screwdriver in from the other side of your post until it just touches the ball. And that way when you feed the shaft in, it pushes the ball straight down the hole and you don't lose it. Simple as that. Now these lock holes are for the screws on your chokes, but the 3 holes down here are for your indent ball. So if you hold both of them 180 degrees to the indent ball and your little lock holes, it'll all just slide together without locking up on the ball, making it hard. So you just feed them through as you're rolling. And then same again when you get up to number 4, just gently put the ball on the top. It'll sit there, just the lightest touch. Push him through and it sits on top. Then you put your screwdriver in from the other side again. And it'll just hold it because the shaft's got a taper on it. You just feed it on. And there you have your choke shaft in. And it's just a matter of going through, doing your screws up. But even so, when you do the screws up, you've got to make sure that they locate in their seats in the shaft. Because you don't need one choke open more than another one, or one not opening as much as the other. So then you check that they're all in the spot, in the right situation. And say you don't rip the heads out of the screws, grab your shifter again so that you can put positive pressure and just do them up a little bit, which is all they need. And there you have it. There's your choke in, and then it's just a matter of putting your feeder back on. Pull him out if you need to. And then you just plate, you just twist your plate square so that you get your screw to start. Put your other one in before you do that one up too tight. Like so. And once again, these don't need to be screwed down. Firm's good. There you are, completely back together again. Now we go through and set them up.